Destiny. It's got guns, it's got magic subclasses, and most of those subclasses recently got reworked. A few days ago, I released an introductory guide for the ARC 3.0 subclasses that were released this season. I went over the fundamentals, how it functioned, and overall provided a general overview so new or returning players could get their feet wet in the systems. And now it's time to do the same for the Solar 3.0 subclasses that were released last season. While I highly recommend watching the ARC 3.0 video if you haven't already, I'm still going to cover most of the same core information as I did last time, albeit a bit more briefly, so don't fret if you're worried about not getting the important information. But without further ado, let's jump right into it. As I've mentioned before, every subclass in Destiny 2 has their own flavor or mission statement to them. These represent what the class is about and what they can do. In the case of ARC, it's about speed and aggression, dealing as much damage in as little time as possible. For the Solar subclasses, which I will be covering today, it's about two very polarizing ideas: burning and healing. Now, the subclass system in Destiny 2 is built upon three fundamental pillars that dictate how everything works: Verbs, Aspects, and Fragments. These pillars work alongside each other in a variety of ways to create a deep system for you to interact with. Let's start with the first pillar, Verbs. Verbs are the building blocks of a subclass, essentially a set of keywords that define how the class works. Within the subclass screen itself, they are represented as the words highlighted in blue. Solar has 5 of these verbs: Scorch, Ignite, Radiant, Cure, and Restoration. Scorch is a debuff you apply to enemies that burns them. In this case, I'll be using either of the Solar Warlock's melees to apply Scorch. When it is applied, they accumulate a number of Scorch stacks depending on the source. This burn damages them over time and deals more damage the more Scorch stacks they have. After a set amount of Scorch stacks are applied, the enemy will then become ignited, leading straight into our second verb, well, Ignite. When an enemy becomes ignited, they create a large solar explosion around them. That's it. You burn them, they get ignited, and they go kaboom. The third verb in Solar's kit is Radiant. Radiant is a buff that can be applied to yourself and even your allies in some cases, and it is a flat damage increase to yourself for 15 seconds. In PvE, for example, this is a 25% damage increase. One way you can proc Radiant is using the Hunter's Radiant Dodge, which buffs themselves and any nearby allies. Our last two verbs do the same thing, but in slightly different ways. Cure is an immediate burst of healing when procced. The amount of healing it gives depends on how many stacks of Cure there are. Restoration, our final verb, also heals you, however it heals you over time rather than all at once, while also providing you an overshield, and your healing cannot be interrupted when taking damage. It keeps on going until the timer ends. And albeit brief, that is the extent of Solar's verbs. As you can see, everything revolves around burning and healing enemies and allies around you. It's rather straightforward. Okay, so that covers our first pillar, Verbs. Now let's move on to the second pillar, Aspects. As I mentioned in the ARC guide, Aspects provide physical abilities that Warlocks, Hunters, and Titans can actually use, what they actually have access to. They are more or less the structure of what your class can or cannot do, the core kit to your subclass, if you will. Currently, there are 3 unique aspects available to Warlock, Hunter, and Titan respectively, and you can only equip 2 aspects at a time. For the sake of simplicity, I will give an example of one aspect from each class. Warlocks. One of your aspects is Icarus Dash. Icarus Dash, as the name implies, allows Warlocks to dash through the air every 5 to 6 seconds. While they are under the effect of Heat Rises, a buff from another one of their aspects, they gain a second dash charge before cooling down. Additionally, rapidly killing enemies while airborne with your super or weapon will grant you the Cure buff. Hunters have an aspect called On Your Mark. Now, On Your Mark provides increased weapon handling and reload speed for you and your allies every time you get a precision kill, which stacks up to 3 times. If you don't know what handling is, it's basically how fast you handle the gun and swap it back and forth. Furthermore, activating your class ability immediately grants max stacks of On Your Mark to yourself. In Titans, one of your aspects is Roaring Flames. Roaring Flames states that kills with solar abilities or ignition kills grants a buff to your solar ability damage that stacks up to 3 times, and when Roaring Flames is active, even your normal uncharged melee will deal solar damage and scorch targets. As you may have noticed, aspects can be incredibly powerful and offer a lot of layers to your playstyle. They even have one more effect I haven't mentioned yet because it leads into our third and final pillar of the subclass system, Fragments. As you can see here on screen, and what you may have already noticed, every aspect has what we call fragment slots, anywhere from 1 to 3 of them each. and these fragment slots determine, well, how many fragments you are allowed to use. But what do fragments do, I hear you asking? Well, they are essentially small buffs that can add to your kit and change your build and make things easier. Augments, if you will. Small buffs on their own, but very powerful when combined with everything else. Fragments also give you a slight bump to your stat totals on occasion, or can even take away from your stats if they are very strong. For example, the Ember of Beams fragment makes your solar supers that have projectiles tracking stronger, while also buffing your intellect stack, which is in charge of your super. Whereas the Ember of Empyrean fragment grants you extended duration of restoration and radiant effects on solar weapons and ability kills, but it lowers your resilience stat, which is your total health. Okay, so in case this has started to become overwhelming, let's roll it back a bit. While there is a lot to the subclass system with aspects, fragments, and your choice of supers and grenades, there is no real right or wrong answer to what you choose to equip. That's the fun of it. Equip whatever you want and feel would combo well together, and see what kind of stuff you can make. Some things are definitely stronger than others, for sure, but unless you're playing at the top level in things like Grandmaster Nightfalls or Master Raids or Trials of Osiris, it really doesn't matter. So have fun, experiment, read everything in the menus. This video is just a core guide to help you understand how it all works together. Verbs define the whole subclass's personality. Aspects provide your core abilities, what you can do, and fragments enhance those and take your build crafting to another level. So just try it. Do a little bit of reading. I believe in you, I really do. And a few other small things to note. There are several different super abilities, jumps, melees, and grenades you can choose from. In fact, every class has access to every grenade, while all the other things I just mentioned are unique to that class. So try them all. See what works, what doesn't. I'm your teacher, not your dad. I believe in you to figure it out. That's half of the fun. But I'm out of time for now, and I hope I was able to help once again in this video. I hope I didn't go too fast. I kind of wanted to keep it concise, short, easy to digest, so leave a comment, like, dislike, all that good stuff, and I will see you beautiful people next time.